Hey y'all, it's Jen. I haven't seen y'all in a while. I apologize for the delay of getting another video out. The last couple weeks I've been super busy working on a new part of my life, which has been super exciting. I'm not going to really go into a lot of details because I'm going to keep a little bit of separation there. But I realized it was time I needed to get another video out, especially since I got a lot of calls last week in reference to some questions about Social Security cards and helping folks get replacement Social Security cards, especially during this time of COVID, while the Social Security Administration is still closed. Now, for us that have been doing this for a while, we remember back before COVID, we would just go into the Social Security office, right? We would take our clients that we were working with and show up at the Social Security office about 8:30 a.m. and sit in line and wait to get in there so that you could get at the front of the line. And, as long as we brought the client with us and some certain identification like birth certificates and stuff like that, then we usually could get in and out pretty quickly and getting a replacement card. But again, COVID hit and the Social Security Administration's offices closed and everything went by phone or online or by mail. So I wanted to share my screen and kind of talk about, first I want to talk about the Social Security Administration, in reference to, let's first start, I'm trying to see where I want to start. I'm going to start with calling first. So most of the time, since I'm in Johnson County, we're using the Lenexa office. There is a specialized number for the Lenexa office. I'm going to look it up. I've got it on my phone, but I will provide that in this post when I link this video of what that number is. That's the actual number you're going to want to call. Instead of calling like the national number, you want to call the actual specific Lenexa number, because what happens is if you call the national number, then you're going to end up sitting on hold for longer, and then they're going to end up giving you the Lenexa number anyways, and then you're going to have to call them and sit on hold. But what I found with the Lenexa office, again, that's if you're calling in Johnson County, usually it takes about 15-20 minutes of being on hold. So we're not seeing those hours and hours of waiting on hold right now for Social Security Administration, which is a good thing. So again, I don't have my phone sitting here with me, but I will post that number in the comment section when I post this video, both on YouTube and Facebook. So you guys definitely grab that number and put it in your phone if you don't have it, because that's the number you want to call when you're trying to call Social Security Administration for the Johnson County area. So that is by phone. The second thing is online. So that's where I wanted to share my screen. I would think I would get better at this after doing this so many times. Okay, so, and I can actually go back on some of this so you guys can see. I'm going to go back so you guys can see where I started. Okay, so if you just go ahead and Google Social Security Administration, there's a couple things I want to point out. Okay, you actually want to scroll down because you're going to see all these little different ad things when you Google this, and sometimes we can get caught up with thinking we're on the right site and we're not. So this one's one that catches people up all the time because it says it right there, like SS card replacement, apply online from home. So you're like, oh yeah, that's what I need to help my client do. Let's grab that. The thing is that these things actually, it's the same exact process that you have to follow, but this one actually charges you a fee to try to help you out. And in the end, they're not going to be much help. Social Security replacement cards are free. You can get 3 free ones it's 3 every year that are free, or up to a 10 in a lifetime. But if you're identifying as experiencing homelessness, then they see that you're not in a position to be able to pay for one, and you explain that, then even if you surpass that 10 number, which I'm going to be honest with you, even working with those experiencing homelessness, I've never had an individual actually get to that 10 point mark, but I mean, I'm sure it's happened. But again, if you explain that you are experiencing homelessness and the documentation you send to them, then they'll go ahead and waive the fee. But if you go through one of these sites and there is a fee, this is not a fee that is being charged by the Social Security Administration. This is actually by the company who's helping you get your Social Security card. So, and one of those things, they're going to go through the same like hoops that you're going to go through. So again, it's not really worth paying for it. So you want to drop down to this one that says official website, and you're going to click on that. Okay, and so this is the official website for the Social Security Administration. As you kind of scroll down, you can see that there's all kinds of things on here. If you're trying to apply for SSI, which is Social Security, or SSDI, which is Social Security Disability, then these are, where you would go as well. Okay, but the first thing I want to point out is a lot of times you will hear to order a replacement Social Security card, to get one, or the easiest way is to apply for that replacement online. Now, I agree with this and I disagree with this. So I'm going to explain to you both reasons why. So first and foremost, I don't disagree that the best thing to do is to, I'm going to click here, replacement Social Security card, is to go ahead and set up a My Social Security online account. Okay, I'm not saying that I disagree with that. Where this can get tricky is that when you do sign up for one, you need to make sure that you write the information down or you keep it in a safe place. And again, for those experiencing homelessness, that might be difficult to keep up with. But the reason I say that is you can be successful in getting one the first time when you're initially setting up. But then if you go to reapply, they require you to enter in the same information that you originally applied with. And so for a lot of folks that I've worked with, where we've kind of had issues is that maybe when they originally applied for it, they, or signed up for the online account, they were using a family member's address, or maybe they weren't experiencing homelessness at the time that they originally signed up for it. And since then they've moved 4, 5, 6 times since then, and they can't recall which address they signed up with. So if you are going in to log back in and you do not recall, like you enter the wrong address or the wrong identifying information, and again, it's usually the address, because your Social Security number is not changing, your date of birth is not changing. It's usually the address that's changed. But if you go in there and you put in the wrong one, it will lock you out very quickly, and then you will not be able to access it again. Or another option of trying to provide identification would be like credit check information. So like they'll ask you certain credit information. And so if you are working with a client who is a poor historian, they might not remember certain credit, that they've had in the past, whether it be a car loan, a house loan, credit card, student loans, whatever it might be, they might not recall. And so if they're not able to verify that either, because of fraud, it'll automatically, or the risk of fraud, it'll automatically lock them out of this account. And then they can't reactivate it no matter how hard they try. The only way to reactivate it, again, back pre-COVID, we would have to go into the actual Social Security Administration and go through a process of them unlocking the account. Now we've tried to do it over the phone. Sometimes we've been successful and sometimes we haven't, based on the representative that we've gotten on the phone. So again, I'm not saying not to set one of these up. I'm just saying if you are setting it up with your client, make sure that they're able to put it in a place that that's going to be something that they can access the next go around. Okay, especially if they're using it to like apply for SSDI or SSI online. Those are definitely times when they're going to be going back in and out of this account. So they'll need to have that information on file. Okay, so enough about that. I think I've over explained that. So anyways, they can go ahead and either if they've already got one, they need to sign in. If not, they can create the account. Once they create the account, again, they put in some information about themselves, they verify who they are, all that good stuff, and then they get an account, and then they can go ahead and replace or request a replacement social security card. Now, if you're doing it online, the good thing is you don't have to go through filling out the whole application because it's going to grab a lot of the information, that identifying information that you already put in. Now the issue is that you'll think you're making progress and everything looks good, but then you get to the end and it will tell you, even though you've already verified this stuff, even though you're applying for it online, you are still required to submit and send in certain identifying documentation to verify and prove who you are. And so that's where we always get the hang up too, is because a lot of times that misconception is that if you apply for it online through a My Social Security account, then you don't have to provide that documentation, and that is false. Really, again, if you go through the My Social Security account, the only thing you're bypassing is having to fill out the complete application if you're trying to do a mail-in request, but it doesn't prevent you or doesn't dismiss having to go ahead and still mail in some sort of proven identity, that being a driver's license, a state driver's license, a state ID, or some other form of documentation that they will accept as a proof of identity. So I say that because I've worked with a lot of people, especially in shelters, who will say, oh, I can just order it online. You can, but at the same time, if you're trying to order a replacement and you don't have an ID, ordering it online doesn't change anything as far as you having an easier accessibility and being able to gain that card. So we're going to go ahead and jump now to what documentation is required when you are requiring or when you're requesting or applying for a replacement social security card. So let me see where I want to go. It's not where I want to go. Okay, so say that we just talked about what the online is, and I'm actually going to scroll down here to evidence document. This is actually the application, the paper application, that if you were going to mail one in, that you would print out and fill out, but it's got the same information on it on the evidence document that they require, whether or not, again, if you're applying online or if you are mailing in the application. So I'm going to go over it here with you. Okay, so evidence document. So this is like the documents you need. You have to prove, verify your age, right? So these are the documents that you can use: a U.S. hospital record, religious record, a passport, a final adoption decree. Most of those times you're using those if you're trying to get a replacement for a kiddo. Not necessarily do we ever use those for an adult, just because I mean, obviously you can use a passport for an adult, but a lot of these other things, if an adult doesn't have a state ID or a driver's license, then they're not likely to have any of those things as well. So we look at evidence of identity, and a lot of these documents here, why we use these first and foremost is because it's gonna provide the evidence of age, and it's also going to provide the evidence of U.S. citizenship. So that's why we look at these documents the most. So if you're experiencing homelessness though, you might see where some of the issue is, because a lot of times those experiencing homelessness are not only needing a replacement social security card, they're needing that replacement social security card so they can go to work, but they're also needing that replacement social security card so they can meet the requirements of getting an ID. So it's kind of like this vicious cycle we get into, that to get an ID, you have to have a social security card, but to get a social security card, you have to have an ID. And if you don't have either one of them, you just end up getting out of luck. And so that's why that's one of the biggest barriers that those experiencing homelessness have. And I think I've said that before, is the identification piece. So we'll see that here, that as a proof of your identity, you must have a US driver's license. Well, if you don't have that, then what are you to do? If you don't have a state issued ID, what are you to do? If you don't have a passport, what are you to do? So again, this is where a lot of people get stumped and don't know what to do. So this is where I go into this document or this area right here. And I am going to annotate for just a second. Let's see where I want to go. I guess I'm going to draw. You guys are going to see how horrible of a drawer I am. And I want to do yellow. So this is where I start working with people. So it says if you do not have the above documents, then and you can't receive those, then you can try to start looking at other things. So when I was working street outreach for the county under Johnson County Mental Health, I had access to their electronic medical record system, right? Most medical providers, whether that be mental health or physical health, hospitals, whatever it is, now keep their patient records electronically. And so again, it's electronic medical record system of some sort. There are all kinds of different ones that people or that different companies use, but that's what holds like patients' protected health information. And so working with the county, what I could do is I could access, that system, and working with a client experiencing homelessness, I could enter their information with their permission into that system and start creating documents that were considered medical records so that I could get the records that I needed to be able to provide to the individual to meet the requirements to get these to get a replacement social security card. Now, I no longer work for a medical agency that can provide this type of documentation, but a lot of our clients, one thing that we're doing when we're working with them on basic needs, we recognize that getting them connected to a primary health care provider or mental health, if that's something that they need, that's part of that basic need spectrum. And so we need to be doing that very, very quickly upon contact if they are willing. And what I've noticed is that a lot of folks experiencing homelessness, they might not be as keen to accessing mental health services immediately due to some trust stuff. A lot of times they are willing to access like a primary medical care. And in Johnson County, I've already promoted them, but looking at Olathe Health Partnership and the different programs that they provide, working with those that are experiencing homelessness, they provide a program that allows those experiencing homelessness to receive free medical services. And so it kind of does that, meets that two requirements, right? They're getting their medical care taken care of, but also, once they're meet that with that provider, even if it's the emergency mobile unit that I highlighted on my page with Kevin and Whitney, that individual automatically gets placed into that electronic medical records system. Okay, and so therefore a medical record can then be obtained for that individual to also help get their Social Security replacement card. So I'm going to highlight it because it's right here. It's the certified copy of medical record, clinical, doctor, or hospital. So again, I meet with an individual, I go over their basic needs: food, hygiene, shelter, medical care, and mental health care. And I automatically get them connected to Olathe Health Partnership if they're willing, and that's something they identify. And I even talk to them like, again, this helps you get in front of a doctor, make sure you're healthy, but also it helps us get the documentation we need to help you with some of these other areas like ID. So what happens is they go meet with Olathe Health Partnership, or they meet with Care Beyond the Boulevard with KK. And once they do, I will assist them in asking for asking this medical provider to provide them a certified copy of a medical record after they're seen. So what makes it certified? A certified copy, all that is required is that the doctor or the nurse practitioner has to sign it. It does have to be a wet ink signature. So again, it can be a printed face sheet, medical face sheet, or medical record of some sort. It has to be signed by the doctor or by the nurse practitioner, right there, wet ink signature, and dated. And then it can be used. The only other thing is that this medical record has to have on it, which most medical records do, it has to have the client's name on it. So of course it has to identify it as their medical record, and it has to have their date of birth. Okay, so again, has to have their name, their date of birth, has to be a medical record for them, and it has to have a wet ink signature by the provider. That has to be a medical doctor or a nurse practitioner, and it has to have a wet ink signature of the date of service. Okay, so once they get that, we automatically take that and go ahead and get it stuck in an envelope with the actual application and get it mailed out. So that eliminates that requirement of having to have these other things, because again, we're going to get that medical record. And most of the time that's a lot easier to get. And get out of this, scroll down. So I wanted to scroll down here and just say, again, most of the time, my highlight's going to come with me. Most of the time with my folks is I don't even do the online thing. I just go straight to printing this document out as a whole. And this is the actual application for the Social Security card. So this is the application that the client will fill out and sign. And again, then I immediately take that medical record. I do not take a photocopy of that medical record, because then the signature is no longer a wet ink signature. So I take that original medical record that was provided, and I take this application that was filled out by the client. We stick it in an envelope, we mail it to the Lenexa office, because again, that's the one we use. And there you meet the requirements to get a replacement Social Security card. And so sometimes people I've had asked, like, well, what is a face sheet? What is a medical face sheet? Sometimes providers will ask me too, when I'm asking them to help develop this paperwork that I need. And so this is just an example of one that I pulled up online. This is not anyone I know, but really with any electronic medical record system, there is an opportunity to, when you enter the person's data in their identifying information, then it automatically creates a face sheet. And so this is just an example of a face sheet. A face sheet will usually always have the individual's name, their date of birth. Again, that shows the age requirements that Social Security is looking for. And then it also talks about, has their demographics on it. And then usually we'll also include the address. One thing that I do also try to do is that when these medical records are being developed, again, there does need to be an address. There needs to be an address on the Social Security application as well, for them to know where they need to be mailing this replacement card. So again, just trying to figure out the best option for an address. And I've said this once and I've said it over and over again, but really connecting and finding a case manager or maybe a local human service agency that works with those experiencing homelessness, that is open to allowing mail to be mailed to them. Because again, you want to make sure that if you go through all this process of getting somebody a Social Security card, that it's actually getting mailed to a place that they're going to be able to access it once it does get mailed. So a lot of times what I do is, once we figured out that address, again, when I'm working with the medical provider and getting this paperwork developed, I like for the address that is placed on the medical record to be the same address that we're going to put on the actual Social Security application down here, so that there's, they correlates, it's together, there's no conflict on it. But anyways, so that's how I've been able to be successful in helping someone get a replacement Social Security card, again, if they do not have an ID. Sometimes we'll do this even if they have an ID, because unfortunately you will read that when they want you to send IDs, they want you to actually send the original ID. And I don't know about you, but I'm not going to mail my driver's license in to some entity with the hope that I'm going to get it back. And those experiencing homelessness, having an ID is huge. And so then trying to explain to them that they need to mail that actual ID in with this application is just foolish, and it's completely asinine to me. And I don't know why the Social Security Administration is still asking people to do that, but they are. So again, even sometimes when someone does have an ID, I will go ahead and totally still work on getting this medical information, because if a certified copy of a medical record gets lost, then we can get it replaced easier than we're going to get an ID replaced. Just kind of my preference. The last thing I wanted to point out, let me see where I was at, was this is an interesting piece that I found on here. So a lot of times there's that misconception, and we've talked about IDs before. There's that misconception that to get a real ID with the Driver's License Bureau, that you do need to have a Social Security card. Now, a lot of workers will tell you that, but in reality, again, we've talked about in the past that if it's just if it's just a replacement ID and it's not been expired, then most of the time they just need to go in with, again, they can go in with that face sheet that we just talked about from a medical provider, and that will work as an option to get someone a replacement. But again, it has to be a replacement. But if their ID is expired, to get an actual new ID, it says here that you may not need a Social Security number card or as a proof of a Social Security number. Instead, a recent pay stub. So if a person has a pay stub from Labor Source or any other employment, they can go ahead and bring in their most recent pay stub to get their driver or their replacement ID, because it'll say their name and their social. Or they can, if they're receiving Social Security benefits, SSI or SSA, they can also bring those too. As long as and again, this is not for getting a replacement Social Security card, but this is if they need that replacement Social Security card and they're struggling to get it so that they can go get that ID, they may not need to wait to get the Social Security card if they have one of these other documents that they can take instead to the driver's license to get, or to Bureau to get the replacement. Okay, so hopefully that's helped. Hopefully that's made some sense. If you have any questions, definitely shoot them to me. But just wanted to share that little tip with you. Hope you guys are having a great day. Take care, be kind to yourself, and of course, be kind to others. Take care.